G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here with an update on the Exceed EX200G generator. And before we get to the generator, I've added a fifth leg to the hutch. Which replaces and supersedes the idea of having this earth stake now since moved from where it used to be. You can just maybe, there we go, that's where the earth stake used to be, and now the generator is accessible with this fifth leg supporting the hutch. So while I'm here, I might as well give you a bit of an update on the generator. It's now done about 75 hours. I changed the oil again at the 30-hour mark, and once again I got a bit of silvery looking metal in the oil that came out of it. However, that's looking quite clean, and that's now done 25 hours. So I'm not as worried now as I was when I first saw silvery metallic magnetic oil come out at the 20-hour mark. Now this is what the oil looks like when it goes in to the generator. This is the oil which I drained from the generator at 20 hours, and it's the one which has ferrous metallic filings, which are extremely attracted to the magnet. Not so much coming into the field of that one, but yeah, what's been happening is the sun on the oil has been setting up a convection driven thermal flow, moving the oil past the magnetic field, and I'm pretty sure there's some sedimentation on the bottom. There we go. Lots of sludge. Now the oil which came out at 50 hours, so it had only done 30 hours, was cleaner, but it wasn't as clean, yet it has very much less sludge on the bottom. I haven't tried it for its magnetic properties yet, but no doubt you'll notice that the 20-hour oil change left about a teacup full of dirty, sludgy, magnetic particle-filled oil in the crankcase, which was my mistake. I had not realised that the sump drain plug was so far above the bottom of the sump. But yeah, in an absolutely dead level position, that will leave a teacup full of old oil in the bottom of the sump. So the answer is roll the generator 45 degrees in the direction of the sump plug when you go to drain it. It's going to be good practice on any oil change, but I'm sort of wearing my kneecaps out, kicking myself in the arse for not having thought of it earlier, because it means that I've run this thing for 50 hours instead of 20 hours with some metal fragments in the oil. And it does make a bit of a difference to the fuel consumption. Actually, I found it's been quite interesting to see the effect of the oil change on the fuel consumption. Up the side we have the average output while burning 2.5 litres through the exceed in the pink traces, and this line along here is pretty much the fuel consumption curve with 5 hours, 4 3/4, 4 1/2, 4 1/4, 4 hours. So it's sort of how long you get how much power. And after the oil change, we're on this curve. Now, 8 amps is having the generator running the lights and the radio in the hut plus the battery charger. 15 or 16 amps, you've got the television on instead of the radio, you've got 2 lights on instead of 1, and you've got the swimming pool filter on. The yellow fuel burn response was the GMC 850 watt 2-stroke generator. The orange response was the X5 El Cheapo copy. And if we come down to the average generating fuel efficiency, if you've got 6.5, 7.5 amps of output, you might have to burn 60-65 mils of fuel per amp hour. If you can crank it up to 15 or 16 amps of output, things get better, down to 33 or 36 mils of fuel per amp hour. What's going on here is that both the generators are not loaded up enough, just running a couple of high efficiency light bulbs, a radio and a battery charger. They're not loaded up enough to get into their most efficient power band, and it's particularly bad with the 4-stroke, which is theoretically much more efficient. Now, here we have amp hours going into the battery over the course of the night from 12 to 21, and over here we have how many mils of fuel per amp hour going into the battery, and we're looking at 121 mils per amp hour for the best night, and that was with the 4-stroke generator loaded up after 3 rainy days and the batteries were pretty sad and flat. At worst, we're talking 225 mils of fuel per amp hour into the battery, and that's with the 2-stroke generator, not making much power but running for quite a long while. Now 220 mils per amp hour, that's about equivalent to my Subaru 1.8 litre 4-wheel drive station wagon at battery charging. Amp hours equivalent on 2.5 litres of fuel. from 35 to 75 amp hours out of the same 2.5 litres of fuel. Giving between 12 and 21 amp hours going into the battery. So the answer to the question, which is more efficient, a small 2-stroke generator or a kind of small middle-sized 4-stroke generator? For my purposes, they're about the same, although the 4-stroke generator gets the same job done in less time. So if you really wanted to watch the television for 6 hours on 2.5 litres while charging the battery, you'd have to say the 2-stroke El Cheapo from China will get you more hours watching television on the same amount of fuel. But it's a 2-stroke, so it's going to put more pollution into the air. And yeah, those graphs are based on more or less meticulous record keeping, because I like knowing what's actually going on. And if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And just as a final flourish, because everything should have many purposes. Don't know if we've got enough sun in the sky to demonstrate. But the 5th leg is the gnomon on a sundial that tells local apparent time, which is much more useful to me than it is to most people, because the sundial on the Tower of Power tells me how well the array is aligned with where the sun is in the sky, whereas the north vertical sundial on the generator hut tells me what time it actually is. So I think I may have just about finished the evolution of the elegant minimalist generator shed, at least until I actually hook a generator onto a fan in a new duct one of these days when I'm feeling particularly bored. But anyway, that's a chainsaw milled sundial. And one day when we've got some sun in the sky to replace the clouds, I might give a bit of a demonstration of the only kind of sundial which actually runs clockwise in the southern hemisphere. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.